Hello, my name's Ryan Clement. Welcome to my YouTube channel, or if you listen to the podcast, welcome to the podcast. It's very rare you meet someone that puts their money where their mouth is and is doing good work. Well, today I met Dianne Greyson, who's doing just that. She is the person behind Ethnicity Pay Gap. If you're in London, you will see the billboards all over the place, and it's been a very successful campaign. Thank you very much for agreeing to do this. I know you're a very busy person with your current campaign, and you'll tell us about that later on. But before we begin, welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Now, before we talk about your very good work, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Okay. Well, particularly, I am the founder of the hashtag Ethnicity Pay Gap campaign, which was started in 2018. And I have been campaigning for this time, trying to make the ethnicity pay gap reporting mandatory. And not only that, it's also about the then what. So what are people doing to close the gap? And I have to say, currently, I'm not hearing much around that. I'm hoping that through all that I'm doing at the moment, we can start having those meaningful conversations to make change. So in this period of time, I've been lobbying government, I've been speaking to organisations, supporting them, doing webinars to really get the message out there. And for me, it's not just about the percentages, it's about the people behind those percentages, because obviously people are affected when they're not being paid fairly.
Right, I see. And what gave you the idea to do this?
It was a light bulb moment, for want of a term. I was driving along and I had been thinking about it, enumerating, because I had all these conversations about why weren't people addressing it, etc., etc. So I was thinking about what can I do, what can I do, and I literally came up with an idea, because that period of time was about the Me Too movement.
Yes.
And they did the hashtag Me Too. So yeah. I came up with the hashtag of this pay gap, and I wanted to just show solidarity to people who were going through it. But that just literally spiraled into something else, because I shared it on LinkedIn, and suddenly people said, "Oh, where did you get this T-shirt from?" So I had to go and find someone to replicate what I designed. And through all that time, I was starting to do more research and understanding magnitude of the situation, because obviously in the beginning you think, "Oh, this is not fair," but then you look into it and you think, "Hold on, this really isn't fair," because obviously the impact that it has on people. So from all of that, then became a campaign. It was just very much organic. I didn't start off saying, "Right, I'm going to do a campaign." It just happened. Yes. And I followed it, and I'm very passionate about it, and I wanted to make sure that I was there to make a difference.
Oh, fantastic. And do people come to you and say, "Look, I'm being paid X pounds an hour, and I'm aware that someone else who's doing the same work is getting X plus Y"? Does that happen, or is your research purely, when you do your research online or in the books or magazines, etc.?
Part of the research that we did evidenced that, but people have told me. So I recount, and when I'm having discussions about a lady who told me that she found out she was being paid £15,000 less.
Wow.
Than her colleague, and I was like, "Wow, exactly." Yeah. So it exists, and I would be surprised if that that level of gap was not relevant around various other organisations. Let's just to say, or more than that.
Yes. Now, as a lawyer, I'll occasionally be called to represent someone who's making an equal pay claim. But I understand that this is different, isn't it? This is not simply about equal pay, someone doing the same type of work or equal value. There's more to it than that. And can you just break it down?
Yeah, I mean, because of the way that the law is, the equal pay is a man versus a woman in terms of, are they doing the same similar work?
Yes.
However, I'm just wondering if we need to be looking at that differently, because as was evidence in my research, equal pay also happens when, for this particular lady who was black, this black lady was being paid less than her white colleague doing the same job.
Yeah. From your experience, then, is there a difference in the gap between? Is it purely? I'm going to use black here. Black male a difference in pay between a white male, or is it
No.
black male could be white male or female?
Yeah, I mean it is complex, and I'm just going to caveat that with,
Sure.
just because it's complex, it doesn't mean you can't do anything about it,
Absolutely,
because people are
absolutely.
running saying, "Oh God, it's complex," and saying, "Oh, they can't do it." But anyway, to answer your question, so um, it is, so you can have a black man, as you say,
Yeah,
being paid less than a black woman, an Asian man, a white man.
yeah,
It's multi-layered. So
yeah,
it is for organizations to recognize about the representation within their organizations. Where are people sitting? Is it heavily loaded on the bottom end? Is it
yeah.
heavily loaded in the middle or the top, for example?
Right.
Or do you have more black women at the top and no black men? So, there is a
Wow.
complexity to it,
Yes.
but the complexity needs to be unraveled.
Yes, 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 yes. Now, ethnicity, I would say most people will think that when we're talking about a pay gap, we are talking about a person of color being paid less than a white person. Is that necessarily? I mean, well, you answer the question. Is that
It's not
always the
necessarily the
case?
case. Not
Right.
necessarily the case. So, say for example, and I'm not saying that there aren't any ethnic gypsies, but let's say a gypsy
Hmm.
person
Yes.
could be getting paid less than somebody who wasn't. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yes.
So that, as I said, there are complexities, and then it will obviously depend on the organisation and the organisation's behaviour in terms of how that manifests.
Yes.
So yeah, it is. It's one of those that it's not necessarily the fact that they have to be a black ethnic
Mm.
or an Asian ethnic. It could be. And, people, immigrants. There was an article recently saying that people who come from other countries and they've come to stay, and they might be from Iraq or Pakistan or anywhere. Let's just say anywhere, and
Yeah.
they've come, there is a probability that their pay could be less because of that.
Right. Yes, I see. I see. How how do you explain to a company who has quite a large number of employees that there could be a problem with a pay gap when it's hard sometimes to recognize the ethnicity of of the staff, for example? I mean, if you got someone who's Polish, Bulgarian, Grenadian, Trinidadian, Vincentian, Vincentian. I mean, it's hard for some people to get their head around that. So
Yeah.
how do you approach it? It seems very complex.
Well, for one, they need to have a data analyst
Right. Yes.
to which not all organizations have,
Yeah.
but that you can get somebody externally to
Yeah.
help support. I don't know if you're aware that I'm a non-exec director of Spectral, which is a pay gap data analytic organization. So they do that work,
Right. Good.
and
Good.
so they help and advise people on that, and probably literally do the work for them.
Right.
So they get the data from the business,
Yes.
and they do the work and give them the evidence to show what's going on in their organization. But if you don't have that type of money, yes, it can be difficult to analyze. But I think not doing it is going to be a bigger problem.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. So you obviously wear various hats or multiple hats
Yeah.
in what you do in this, as you say. So you're very passionate about this, which is obviously a plus because you're putting the word out there. Have you seen results in you speak to an organization, you've identified something, you can't obviously breach client confidentiality, but do you
Mm.
see results? I mean, it's one thing highlighting something, it's another thing someone implementing it. And how do you
Yeah.
find that?
The one particular organisation who I was supporting, they looked at the data and recognised where the issues were, and in there the barrier was the promotional aspect. So they found that their ethnic minority, I don't want to say select particular one, that they were not being promoted appropriately, and there were barriers and challenges that were occurring. So they recognised that, and they looked at how best to change the process, because there has to be a process change for things to change. And as you said, I wear many hats. Another one of them, sorry, is Synergize Solutions, which is quality, diversity, inclusion. And that, you know, we use that. Well, I use that piece because when there is evidence to say that there is an issue and you can identify what that issue is, we can help to develop the policy procedures, or we could help. It could be a matter of, you know, there's some negativity happening within the management structure. They might need to be a long-term training process. I'm not one of those believers that, you know, you roll somebody and do one day and that's it. That will not help. You know, it's about embedding and developing and making sure that there is a result at the end of it.
Yes.
So, you know, that's what we would try to do. So it's about identifying what the specific is and making sure that you make everything to make sure that you can change that initiative or the situation that's occurring.
Right. Okay. So am I right in saying it may not be one hat you wear, it might be multiple hats where you come in, you're engaged to, I don't know, carry an audit, for example. You've identified an issue and you're holding the hand of the employer all the way through, rather than just say, this is my report, bye-bye, good luck.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can't just say, oh, it is A, B, or C, get on with it. You have to help and be supportive. And, you know, it's talking about the ethnicity pay gap specifically. So where I come in, I've had organisations saying, you know, we want to do this, but we're not quite sure.
Yes.
So that's where I come in and say, okay, these are areas you need to be looking at, you know, and talk to them about what they've got currently and help them to find a pathway to the next stage. So the next stage is getting the data, and the data they do themselves, or I might recommend Spectral. They might want to use somebody else. You know, it's entirely up to them. But I don't, you know, I'm not a data expert, so that's not my field.
Right.
So on the other end is where, you know, doing policies, procedures, training. You know, I can get involved with that also.
Right. Okay. Now I'm aware, because it's well publicized, so well done, congratulations, that you've got a current campaign running, which I think expires on the 30th of June, if I recall correctly.
That's correct. Yes.
Can you tell us about the campaign? What led you to do the campaign now? And so
I have had this in my mind for about 2 years now. And during that time, I was trying to apply for funding, which unfortunately I didn't get. So I still had the idea. I felt that the community needed to be aware of what was going on, because I felt that people who look like me and have other ethnicities are not aware that this is an issue. Yes. So I wanted to do something visible that people could see and try and get engaged with it. And start asking those questions to make sure that there are more voices in this area to make sure that change can happen.
Yes.
So I had decided that at that period of time that I wanted to do London, particularly because of the finance. I would have preferred to do it regionally, but it takes funding to do all of that. So I focus on London. So right across London, there are billboards and what they call ad shells. They're sort of standing billboards of the campaign, and each one has, you know, a different picture on it, and the comments are you being paid fairly? ?
Yes.
So getting people to think about that. And maybe look into it.
Yes, yes.
And also giving evidence about research that was done by the Resolution Foundation in 2018, that there was an ethnicity pay gap of 3.2 billion. Letting people know that. Wow. And also it says, has anything changed?
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So you know, I was very passionate about doing it. Some people saying, oh, well, why am I wasting my time doing that? But to me, I just felt that I needed to get the message out there, and I needed to get some engagement from the community. They needed to recognise this was happening, and to get their voices heard within their their employer, or in their community, within their family. Have these discussions, because this didn't happen overnight.
No.
Even in my mum's time,
Yeah, sure.
the same thing was happening. So this is not something that just turned up. It's been
Yes.
going on for years. So what hasn't happened is action.
Yes. Now, I suppose the two questions I think in one, but I'll deal with the first bit first. Now, there's confidentiality regarding people's pay. So how do you, or what advice would you give to employees who suspect they're being paid less than their counterpart? But of course, if a counterpart doesn't discuss their salary and the employer's not going to say, I'm paying X, that amount of money, how do you get around that to know there's a gap?
On the FTSE Pay Gap website, myself and the co-chair, we recognised that there was a lot for organisations, but there was nothing for employees. So we provided some guidance on that in terms of how to have that conversation.
Right.
Because we recognise that people might think that this is happening, but they're not sure. Yeah. So it's about having some guidelines in terms of assistance to be able to help to start having those conversations. In the research that I've done, impact of this pay gap in Black women, people were telling us that they were speaking to HR, they were speaking to the line managers. Yeah. However, more often than not, they didn't get any redress. Yes. One also evidencing to us that they were sent down the grievance path. Oh, right. Because of it.
Right. I see.
And she had to leave.
Right. I see. So if an employee comes to you and says, look, Dianne, someone's approached me, an employee's approached me, who they suspect they're being paid less than their co-worker, but we don't want to breach confidentiality. What general advice would you give the employer on how to handle that? To be transparent, but you can't be too transparent because presumably they're not saying, oh yeah, so-and-so earns so pounds. I mean, I know some organizations have it because they have grades, and you know what grades are, so you know what pay they receive.
But however, there's a caveat in that pay levels, in that, because someone said to me, well, I'm on grade G, there's no way there could be a pay gap. I said, well, the gap appears when you stay at grade G for 25 years and everybody else is jumping over you. That's when it happens.
Yes, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the employer, they could find out the information. They don't have to say, I've looked at John Smith's details and you're absolutely correct. But they could say, well, yes, I've looked into this and you are correct, and say how you're going to address it. It's no point just saying, yes, you are correct, and leave it. How are you going to address it? How are you going to support that person? Because again, through our research, we also recognise that there is stress and anxiety that goes with all of this for the person that is going through this.
Yes. So thank you. Now you can put this much better than I can, but I want to find out what your view is on this. So do you think every company should publish this? I mean, it'd be very difficult for a small private company with about 5 employees. But what's your general view on that?
Well, yeah, I think so. Let's say that there's an employer that's got 100 employees.
Yes.
And the probability there'll be some Black and Asian and other minoritized people within that. That still could demonstrate that there could be an ethnicity pay gap. And it's all about being transparent and being honest.
Yes.
If you're being transparent and being honest and being fair,
yes,
there shouldn't be a problem.
No. Do you feel it has an effect? It's not a name and shame, but the same principle that by being forced to publish this information, that will make you do something about it if there is a problem?
Yes, unfortunately, the evidence suggests that if it's not made mandatory, less organisations will do it.
Right.
And as I said to you before, it's not just about making it mandatory. It's about the plan to change it. What action plan? What narrative are you then saying after you've done it?
Right. Right.
You know, as I said, the so what? Okay, great. You've told us this, and
Yeah.
have you looked after your employees?
One of my favorite authors is Alice Walker, who I had the pleasure of seeing many years ago at the Barbican and I can't remember the other book festival, Cheltenham Book Festival. And it was a pleasure. Yeah. I love Alice Walker. And the first time I came across the term colorism was through her. Now, I don't want to say, I want you to explain things. You're the expert. Can you tell us what colorism is? And then what's your view on it, or effect it may have in your work, or not what your work, but, you know, what you identify in the workplace?
Yeah. Well, I published an article recently about colorism versus race. And in fact, I'd quoted from a Time magazine, and they said colorism as a word does not really exist. And it's actually Miss Walker that used that term.
Right.
And everyone said, oh, I'll have that. I'll use that then. But it's not really a specific word. And colorism is quite interesting in that, particularly for us Black people, I think that colorism exists for quite some time. And I've suggested that maybe this could be down to colonialism. Being that, you know, those with lighter skin were treated better than those with darker skin.
Right.
And I want to throw an antidote or a small comment, just because it's something that my mum had said to me when I was just about to leave school. So I'm light-skinned. My best friend was dark-skinned, and she said to me, you will probably get a job quicker than she will because of the color of your skin.
Wow.
And that's what she truly believed.
Yeah.
And my mum's a dark-skinned woman,
yeah.
And you know, through her time, she has had challenges because of it. And I think colorism is an issue. You know, there is colorism in the Asian community,
yes,
and as I said, the Black community as well. That the closer proximity that you are to white, the better you will be. But as I said in my article, that doesn't necessarily absolve you from being attacked, you know, racism, etc. It just might mean that you might be less likely if there was a dark-skinned person who they could attack first, possibly.
Right. I mean, as a lawyer who specializes in employment law, that raises a very interesting point, a very interesting issue, because with discrimination, direct discrimination, you need to have a comparator.
Yeah.
Now, we're talking about race discrimination. And if you're talking about, say, for example, a Black person is bringing a case of direct discrimination based on race, they have to find a comparator who's not of their race. And, I'm using race in the statutory sense here.
Sure.
So that person will be a non-Black person. And now, if a darker skinned person feel that they're being treated less favorably than a lighter skinned person, but both people are Black, that's going to be an interesting comparator to see how the tribunals will deal with that. The tribunal expect a Black person will be saying someone, for example, is white or is Asian or whatever. I mean, I know. I mean, I'm speculating here, but it's going to be very interesting for a dark-skinned Black person who, let's just say, is a British person who's dark-skinned, and they're saying that they're treated less favorably than a British Black person with lighter skin. That's an interesting comparator.
It is. I think you need to do a test case, maybe.
I need to. There's someone, if you're watching this, come forward, step forward. And of course, the problem we're going to have as well is that the tribunal he's going to have to determine how light someone really is.
Exactly.
And is that person the
Exactly.
appropriate comparator? Because
Yeah.
the employer will say, well, no, that person's not quite so light. We've got lighter people. That's going to be very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. I mean, even you could throw into the mix, you know, a mixed race person
Yes, yes. Well,
versus a
indeed.
light-skinned person.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, indeed, indeed. I mean, this has been very interesting, but I want to then ask you about something else, because there's a caveat in the law where if you have, for example, a black woman who a black woman who's being paid less than a white person. And I said, I'm just using this for ease of reference, could be any
Yes.
person. But I think I think I read somewhere, no, I did, because a report that you contributed to, and I'd be grateful if you can expand on this, where black women were being paid less. Now, the caveat in the law is you either bring a case on sex discrimination as being a woman, or you bring a case on race, but you can't
Yes.
bring the case as being a black
Exactly.
woman. Now,
Exactly.
that's a caveat. That's a problem we have. How does
Yeah.
that, what problems does that cause for what you identify? Because the report I read that you contributed to did identify black women.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's there to see, really. You know, as you said, you know, you're black and you're a woman. So therefore, you're going to be penalised by the ethnicity pay gap, and you're going to be penalised by the gender pay gap.
Yeah,
So, you know, you suffer twice.
yeah,
And you know, God forbid if you become a mother, because then that's another issue.
yes, yes,
Because as the Fawcett Society indicated, the ethnic motherhood pay gap is because, you know, women who might look like me or an Asian woman will find it difficult to get back into work than their white colleagues, as evidenced.
yes,
So, you know, there are so many challenges that
yes,
occur because of what you're saying. And is it that the law needs to change? They need to, or maybe not necessarily change, but an addition being made
yes,
to compensate for that,
yes, 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 yes,
because clearly it wasn't even considered.
yes, sure, sure. What are you hoping to find as a result of your recent campaign? What response are you hoping to get from it?
Well, I'm hoping that the community will recognise the issue. I'm hoping that they start mobilising themselves to advocate for themselves, and I'm hoping that they made their voices heard. You know, one of the things we talk about on the website is, you know, speak to your local MP,
Right.
get them to advocate for the community.
Yes.
You know, because I'm sure you've seen the manifestos that have been going around for, you know, what's going to be happening soon,
Yeah.
potential change of government.
Yes.
And the majority of them actually had the ethnicity pay gap in it, which was a surprise to me,
Right.
very good surprise.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I'm jumping in the air, because I recognize that, you know, that those are just words on paper, and it's
Yeah.
about the action thereafter.
Yeah.
So, you know, although they're saying these things and they're planning, they've got plans, is I think that people need to do for self as well,
Yes.
to be part of the discussion, part of the change. Because what will happen is if the community doesn't get involved, is that it will be done to them.
Yes.
So government will say, okay, well, this is what we will get organisations to do, and you know, these are the parameters. The end.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that means the voice of the people not heard. Are they sure what will be brought into the policy is good enough? One of the things I am hoping is that if well, it's looking like Labour is going to go through, we don't know, but if it is, they've got
Yeah.
that on their manifesto. I'm hoping that that they will engage me in some way to help to shape the policy,
Good.
to make sure that I can put in as much of what I've been doing into what they are going to produce. But
Yes.
I am only one person, so the more conversations that happen, the better.
Yes. Yes. Indeed. Indeed. Now, I specialize in all areas of employment law. Um, Now, I don't believe, I'd love to see one day where there's no need for an Equality Act. So someone does not come to me and say, I feel I've been discriminated against because it's been eradicated. It no longer happens.
Yeah.
Do you think in 20 years' time, we will still have an ethnicity pay gap because there is still a gap? In other words, are we going to get that net zero? There is no gap. What do you feel?
Will it be net zero? Possibly not. But I'd like to make sure that things change dramatically. And the only way that can happen is if there is an action plan or narrative around closing the gap, because presenting it doesn't help anybody. It's about what you're doing to make sure that your people are being paid fairly. And that's what I'd like to see. If that is in what the government's plans are, that will go a way to making change. I can't say for net zero. It might be more than that. I'm just hoping that we start getting some proper change, because, as I said, this has been going on for a long time.
Yes.
And it's really time that we get something measurable and relevant to make sure that people are being changed. So people are being paid fairly.
Yes.
And one of the things I tend to say is, it's a human right to be treated fairly.
Yes.
And that's about fair pay.
Yes.
So let's make sure that this gets done sooner rather than later.
Yes, indeed. Well, I hope, I mean, I'm really pleased that you agreed to do this. And I hope that in a year's time, when you're advising the government, I can still contact you and you will respond and not feel I'm too big now. I'm part of the government.
No.
Right.
Oh no. I'm just a normal human being. I'm not into airs and graces. I want, the whole point of this, and I think people need to recognize, I don't get paid for what I do. Right. I'm doing it because I think it's important to do it.
Right.
So this is not my day job. I'm doing it because somebody has to do it. If not me, then who?
Right. Okay. Well said.
So, I'm, years from now, you'll still be able to contact me.
Good. I'll hold you to this. It's been recorded now.
No problem at all.
Good. Now, what can we do to contribute to you raising the funds so you can do the good work that you're doing?
To fund the campaign, I mean, it's been very, very difficult. I've personally had to fund it. So I've got campaign T-shirts, which I was wearing one. I'm not quite sure if you can see that.
Yes. I've seen. Yes.
Yes. So I've been buying them, and for people to then buy, because there was no money coming through.
Right.
So support. I think the key people who should be thinking about supporting are organisations, actually. You know what I mean? Because if they are, and I say perpetrator in the politest fashion, if that is a word, if it is going on, then organisations should be supporting the campaign rather than ignoring it.
Yes.
Because it's about the people being an organisation. Because if they up and leave tomorrow, what are you going to do then? So you need to recognise that if you don't treat people fairly, if you don't pay them fairly, they're going to go.
Yes, absolutely.
So if organisations can help to support by donating to the campaign, or any funders who are willing to contribite, would be grateful, because I said my ambition would be to do the billboards regionally.
Yes, wow.
Because it's not a unique situation to London. It's everywhere.
Yes. And we as a general public can buy T-shirts and mugs off your site. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. Right. So all they need to do, if they can go to www.ethnicitypaygapcampaign.com and go to the shop, you can order your T-shirts there. We're just about to restock, because a very large organisation bought quite a lot.
Right.
So we're restocking now.
Fantastic. Well, look, Dianne, it's been a real pleasure. I know you're busy. As you say, you've got many hats on. Not at the moment, but you've got many hats anyway. So
Yes.
you're off to next. So I know you've got a campaign coming along. So look, we really appreciate that you've brought this to our attention and get the insight of your expertise on this. So thank you very much for doing this.
It's a pleasure. Thank
And
you.
we'll speak to you again when you're advising Sir Keir Starmer.
No problem.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Dianne. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.